Today we're going to convert some SVGs to use with the Glowforge here on Chip Builds. Okay, so I recently just joined Auntie Tay's business membership, and when you join her membership you get access to a ton of free SVG files and a ton of different fonts, and a lot of them are Disney related, which is something that I like a lot. And I often make my own SVGs since I am a graphic designer, but I decided I really wanted to test out this membership and see what it was about. And also she just makes really cool files. So let's check it out and see what we're gonna make today. So right here, if you just go to the homepage, auntietay.com, you'll see up here she has a bunch of different tabs. And I'm just gonna come over here to the top to where it says Disney. You can also go through the SVGs tab, and there's just a bunch of different things. So I'm just gonna come over here to Disney, and I'm gonna come down to classic characters. And then I'm just gonna scroll down here, and then just kind of see what I want. Like, all of these just look really cool. I mean, really, we can make a project out of all of them, and you would just never run out of files to use. So I'm just gonna keep going. Oh, Marie's pretty cute. We can make some cute stuff with that. But I recently watched Hercules, and I really want to do something with that, and I'm pretty sure she has Hercules bundles on here, so let's just find it. Here we go. All right, so Bless My Soul bundle, and I'm gonna save that. And then I also want to get another SVG too, so I'm gonna come back up here to this Disney tab, and I'm gonna come down to Pixar. I was trying to find the Frozen SVGs because I love that movie. That's one of my favorite movies. And for whatever reason, it kind of ended up in the Pixar section. I'm not sure why, but that's where I found it. So if you are a member of hers and you're looking for Frozen, it's in the Pixar category. So again, we just have tons of cool different files here. Like, we have all the princess t-shirts from the Wreck-It Ralph 2 movie. And if we just keep going down here, we will find, here we go. So here we have Frozen, and what I want is I want this Please Return to Arendelle & Co. I think this just looks super cute, and I think it's gonna end up being a really cool keychain. So again, we'll just click it, and then we will save it to our desktop. Okay, so I've opened up these SVGs in Adobe Illustrator since that is the vector program that I use on a daily basis, but you could easily do this in Inkscape, which is a great free alternative to Illustrator. So what I want to do is I want to make a badge reel cover out of Zeus's little medallion that he has that like holds his like toga together. But as the SVG is right now, I'm sure this is fine for the Cricut, but because I'm going to laser cut this on my Glowforge, I need to change the file a bit to make it usable with the Glowforge software. So if I try to just import this as is, it's not going to work well, and we can do an example of that right now. So as you can see, a thing has popped up in the bottom corner that says processing, and it says your design is being prepared, and it's having a lot of issues because of the use of different colors. So one of the ways that Glowforge's interface works is you color code things, right? So the colors don't matter too much for any specific meaning. Typically, like if I know I want to cut out a shape, I make it red. If there's something I want to score, that I'll typically do like green or purple. And then if it's something I want to engrave, I'll do black or blue. But so as you can see, we've imported the SVG just how it is. How each design is separated, you can see only a couple of them will really work. Like the Zero to Hero will be fine. You know, like if you click this one, and we can move it up here, you know, click this one, and if we find it over here on the left, and you can see too, because we haven't color coded anything, it kind of grouped it weird. So if I click engrave and I want to engrave this, everything else that is in this layer that Glowforge has auto grouped together is gonna be that same thing. So say I wanted to engrave this but then cut out the Zeus medallion, I can't because they're on the same layer. So that's why you can't just take one of the SVGs from her website and just go and send it to the Glowforge to cut. So let's jump back into Illustrator now, and then we can edit these files to make it work for what we need it to do. Okay, so now we're back in Illustrator, and I'm just gonna pull a copy of this medallion by clicking Option and clicking on it and dragging it over here. So I'm gonna zoom in and see what we're working with. I'm gonna ungroup it, right click ungroup, and then now each individual thing. So if we move it, we can see that this isn't a completed shape, that these are different parts of it. So if we brought it in kind of like this, then we can engrave it, but it's gonna be really deep and dark and just kind of tricky, and ultimately we don't need that. So I'm just gonna delete that. So you can do this next part a lot of different ways. I'm just gonna be kind of lazy about it, and I'm gonna move this piece, and then I'm gonna hit A for my direct selection tool, and I'm just gonna select over this and hit delete. And then so now you can see that's gone, and then we can bring this piece back over to where it belongs, and then we can just select both of them and get it back in the center where it should be. Okay, so unfortunately when we did that, now we found out that this very top part isn't a perfect circle, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here to my shape tool, get my ellipse, and I guess it'll be this color, and I'm just gonna kind of size it the correct size of this inner thing, and I'm going to make it a stroke, but I'm gonna change the color just so I can see what's happening over here. Okay, so we have this blue line, right? But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna increase the weight of the stroke up here at the top. But first I'm gonna click on it so that it actually applies that weight. And we'll make it that. We'll make it 3 points thick. And I'm just gonna bring this down in size a little bit. And what I'm gonna do too is I'm going to align these up so that they coincide. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this path, I'm gonna come up to object, and I'm gonna click expand. I'm gonna hit OK, and then I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna select also this background, and I'm gonna come over here and click unite in my pathfinder. And then now that has given me this blue shape. So now we're pretty close to getting this ready to work on the Glowforge. So we have our 2 different colors. So if I were to send it in as is, I could choose a different setting for this yellow part, and then I can choose different settings for this blue part, and it will be on 2 separate layers. So for this lightning bolt kind of like swirl with the cloud, I'm gonna want to engrave that for sure. So I'm gonna leave that blue, and that's fine. But for this outer ring, what I want to do is I want this outside of the circle to be my cut line. So I'm gonna click this shape and then come over here and switch it to a stroke instead of a fill. And then now you can see we have this outer layer and then we have this inner layer. And so what I want to do is I'm gonna hide this layer. So now we can see that we have the outline of our shape here, but they're still being grouped together. So I'm gonna right click and click release compound path. Then I can click on this inner piece and change it to like a green color. And then this outside one, I'm gonna change to a red color. So now we have red, green, and blue. And I know the green is really hard to see, but it's gonna do just a light little score right around the whole thing. And so for me, this file is done for the badge reel. So I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna come up to file and make a new document. And I'm gonna do 19 by 12 inches because that's the bed of my laser, so that I know how big I can cut and make sure it's gonna fit on my sheeted material. So I'll paste that in here, and then we're just gonna group the whole thing, and just that way we have it in one place, saved, ready to go. So we have that done, and like honestly, we can use any of these other ones in Glowforge and it would probably be fine, like we kind of saw when we first imported this file into Glowforge. But so I really love these files that Auntie Tay has done, where it's like the Return to Neverland, Return to Arendelle, and I just think they are super cute. And so I'm just gonna copy this, paste it into this new document, and I'm gonna just make sure that the snowflake is the same color as the text because I want it all to be the same settings. And then I'm gonna hit group. And then now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here to the shape tool again, and I'm gonna click my polygon tool, and then I'm gonna click and drag, and then I'm gonna hit shift just so that it stays contained. All right, I'm gonna switch this to a stroke so that we can see what we're working with. And this is going to be a keychain. So let's move it so it's like this. And if we zoom in here, we can see that we have these very pointed, jagged edges. And so for my keychain, I don't want it to be so sharp because if you put this in your pocket, it could poke you. I think it'll be fine, but I would just prefer to have them rounded. So I'm gonna click on this shape and come up to Effect. And I'm gonna come down to Stylize and come over here to Round Corners. Now you always wanna make sure that your preview box is checked so that you can see what it looks like. So 0.25 is super crazy, right? That's way too much. So we can click OK, and then we can kind of zoom out and see, and that actually looks pretty good considering all things. And so we're just gonna stick with that. Okay, Okay, so now I know I want my keychain to be about 1.25 inches wide. So I'm gonna click on this shape again and come up to transform. And for my width, I'm gonna do 1.25 and hit enter, and it will automatically change the height as well. So now we need to shrink down this artwork for the return to Arundel. And you know, different shapes will be better for different applications, right? So something like this, maybe you might want to do a more rounded rectangle, like a 1 inch by 3 inch, and that would probably look really good too, but I really like this hexagon shape. So roughly, I think I want it like right there, I'm thinking. I think that's pretty good. And then the last thing we want to do is we need to add a circle for the keychain hardware. So I'm just gonna drag a little circle, and then we'll bring it over here. And what I'll do is make sure that these two shape pieces are aligned, yeah, like right there. And then I'm gonna select these two shapes, switch the stroke color to red, because that is gonna be what we're gonna cut out. And this is gonna stay black because that is what we are going to engrave. So that looks good too. So then I'm gonna group this together, and then the only thing left is we need to make this the correct size for the badge reel cover. So I'm just gonna click on this shape and come up to transform, and I'm pretty sure it's like 1.42 inches, and then hit OK. And then now we have our two designs ready to go to be cut on the Glowforge. So I know that kind of seemed like it was a lot of editing, but it really wasn't. And it's not that hard to actually convert the SVGs into something that your Glowforge can manage and read and cut out. So let's bring these up into Glowforge, and then we can go out into the garage and cut these out. So now that we're in the Glowforge interface, you can see already how different our file is, let alone we just have less designs in here. But now that you can see that we have all the different parts, right? So our hexagon keychain outline, that can be its own settings. The circle cut for the badge reel is its own setting, and that inner circle for the score is its own setting. Then we have the lightning bolt and cloud, and that can be its own setting. And then last we have the return to Arundel, and it can be its own setting. So that will be great. I already have a piece of scrap wood in the laser that I used for a previous project, and it's already masked. Now, typically when you are cutting acrylic or wood, it comes with a masking, or if you use your own materials, you add a mask yourself. And I typically use a mask because I just don't want to sand the scorching or the burned edges off of it. So masking eliminates that step, and I just think it's easier. I'd rather pull off the masking tape than to sand, but that's up to you. You can totally do this without masking tape. So I'm going to come up here to the top left where it says unknown, and this is where we're going to choose our material. Now, I'm not using the certified material that Glowforge provides just because it's kind of on the expensive side, and I can get wood cheaper locally. Oftentimes you can just use uncertified material, and you can put in your own material thickness, and you can use calipers to get the correct thickness and type it in here. But the 1/8 inch wood that I get is very similar to the Glowforge proof grade materials, and so I'm just going to click medium maple plywood because I know I'm using 1/8 inch plywood. These different layers have now been assigned something, right? So like the reds have been assigned a cut. So sometimes Glowforge gets it wrong when it tries to auto do it for you. So we don't want this to be cut, because if we do, then the medallion middle is just going to pop out. So I'm going to switch that to score, and I'm just going to leave it at the draft setting. Whenever I score, I use draft, and it's fine. But that's something that you can mess with if you're doing this at home, and you know, it's really your own preference. And then the lightning bolt and cloud, standard graphic engrave, and then the Arundel engrave, same standard graphic. And like, you can have custom presets. I do have different custom settings for 1/8 inch materials, but for this example, we're just going to use the proof grade settings that they suggest. Typically, the settings that Glowforge suggests, it's a very deep engraving, and so if you don't want the deeper engraving, you need to experiment to get a lighter color. The one last thing I'm going to do before I hit the cut button is I'm going to come up here to the top in the middle and hit more where these 3 buttons are, and I'm going to click set focus. And typically you want to have the focus be set in the middle of your artwork, so I'm going to click there, and then the Glowforge is going to move around and focus, and then it's going to change the picture a little bit on the screen because it's focusing on that specific area that we did. So because the Glowforge uses a camera right in the middle, it has like a fisheye lens on it, so the edges aren't super perfect. So doing this will help a lot, and it will get the correct thickness for the material you're using. That way that you're making sure that you're going to be able to cut through the whole of the board and you're not wasting materials. So now that it's done that, it's saying it's ready, and then now I can come up here and click cut, and it's going to prepare your print. And this is going to vary based on like your internet connection and how complex the design is. So it's saying it's going to take 5 minutes and 1 second to cut out these and engrave. And you can see a little thing has popped up saying proofread material not found. Printing on the wrong material or with the wrong settings can result in fire, toxic fumes, and damage to your Glowforge. That's totally true. Keep that in mind. But I know this is going to work because this is what I do pretty much every day. Okay, so as you can see, we have this masking on it, and you can see that the burned marks and scorches are on the masking tape, and they shouldn't be on the piece itself. Sometimes it does get under there, but we'll deal with that if we have it. So there's a couple different ways that you could take off the masking tape. You can use your finger, which takes forever and I don't recommend, or you can take a piece of like duct tape or gaffer's tape and then pull it off. Or you can get this awesome little plastic scraper, which is super cheap off of Amazon. And you can just use this to kind of scratch it off, and I think this is my favorite. This is the #1 thing I'll use, and if this doesn't work or if the piece is too small, which these might be a little too small for this, then I'll use the tape. So let's do this one first. Let's try the tape on this one, and then we're just going to really press it down all around, press it down. Then we're just going to bring it up, and look at that. So all the masking tape came off, as you can see, and then we're left with this thing. So we did get some tiny scorch marks, and we could just hit that with a little bit of a sanding sponge or sandpaper, or we can leave it. It's really personal preference. Okay, so the next one, I'll show you how the scraper works. So you kind of just, you know, put some pressure, and this one is my favorite just because it's the quickest typically. And there you go, we've gotten all the masking tape off in like 2 seconds. So this one came out pretty cool. I like both of them, but so let's put some hardware on this one, and then we can glue this to the badge reel. So for the hardware for the keychain, we have the little jump ring, and then we have the keychain itself. So I'll just hook this through, and we can put it through there. Then we can just take these pliers and there we go. So now we have this cool little Arendelle keychain. Okay, so typically I make these different pronoun badge reel covers, and what it is I've just cut out a little disc on the laser with the pronouns, and then I 3D printed this custom cover that goes on top of these rounded badge reels. And I did this where I 3D printed it so that way I had a flat surface to glue to rather than having to try to glue a flat piece to a curved piece. So that's what I'm going to do to this. I'm just going to glue this to the back, and then we will attach it to the badge reel. And so for this, my favorite glue to use is E6000. And any squeeze out that happens once it's dry, you can easily pick it off. And then so I'm just going to try to line this up as best as I can with the bottom. So now we'll let that dry, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so on a lot of the laser cut projects I do, I typically will paint them, but instead of like dealing with acrylic paint and just making a big mess for all these small pieces, I use these oil paint markers. I believe I got these ones on Amazon, and they just work out really well. And then I also sometimes will use Sharpies as well for like bigger areas. But so I'm just going to do this for the background, and then this larger circle I'm going to leave the clouds the wood color, and then I'll use this to color in the bolt. I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Okay, so now that this is painted and dry, we can attach it to here, and it just snaps on like that, and then we are good to go. And then now this is complete and ready for use.